Now, India Today hunts down elusive Toolkit player Pieter Friedrich on camera. Peter admits terrorist Bhinder is his friend. India Today grills Pieter Friedrich on his ISI links as well as the Khalistani links. Peter has now been on Indian police radar since 2006. Chaiti Narula with this exclusive.
You're a vocal critic of the Narendra Modi government, of the RSS and the BJP, and you've spoken a lot about the governance, the style of governance as well. But back in the day when INC was in power, the Indian National Congress was in power, you did say things against the INC and against Mahatma Gandhi as well?
Yeah, certainly there have been a lot of ongoing problems with human rights issues in India for a number of decades, actually. The INC itself was largely responsible for the 1984 Sikh genocide, although RSS elements were also implicated in that attack. And there's just a number of human rights issues that have been ongoing.
Peter, nobody takes any of that away from you when you write as a journalist or when you write as an author, and it is your right to write what you want to write. And as a journalist, I can tell you that one should have the freedom to express what they want to. But you know, the locus standi comes into the question here because of your association with Bhajan Singh Bhinder. What is your association with Bhajan Singh Bhinder? Is it true that you've started several companies with him as well? How are you linked with him?
You know, Bhajan Singh is a longtime friend. He is among many of the South Asian origin friends that I have. Bhajan Singh, he's perhaps the most genuine, biggest-hearted humanitarian that I've ever known.
He's a terrorist, Peter, who is launching attacks on India. He's been associated with the OFMI as well. And you're saying you're friends with a terrorist?
Well, by what stand do you make that claim?
Because with OFMI, you and Bhinder launched a massive propaganda against Mahatma Gandhi as well. And we've got several documents that show that you and Bhinder have opened several companies together, changing names frequently. What's the story there?
So, as far as propaganda against Mohandas Gandhi, I would point you to the fact that there are mass movements to remove Mahatma Gandhi, Mohandas Gandhi statues from Africa by Black Africans. This is not an issue that is solely the domain of myself or of any other person. It's an issue that has drawn the attention of a large number of people around the world.
Peter, the question about you and Bhinder having opened several companies together, changing names frequently, that's the answer I'm looking at.
Now, what do you mean when you say changing names frequently?
There are certain names, and I've got this, that you've operated with several different names. One is Peter Singh, Peter Nevers, Peter Flanagan, Peter Friedrich.
I'm proud. I would say I'm humbled to be associated with the name Peter Singh. Singh is a name which was adopted as a reaction, a response to the oppression of the caste system in India. And it is a name which is intentionally adopted by myself as a way to identify with the anti-caste movement.
But you know, I'm still not convinced with this entire bit about Bhajan Singh Bhinder, the terrorist who was funding attacks in India. He's been associated with OFMI, and you say you're a good friend of his. I'm unable to understand why wouldn't you come out clear with your relationship with Bhajan Singh Bhinder?
But Seti, I would come back to you and say, you keep using this word terrorist, and I think that you and I may have different definitions of what a terrorist is.
The question is here, on the company that you registered along with Bhajan Singh Bhinder, that safety net transfer, it was registered in your name in 2007, and then you disappeared from company details in 2010 when Bhinder and his wife joined in. Were you just paid to register the company? What is the story here?
Well, the story is that, let me ask you, if you were putting yourself out there, and you were standing forth against one of the largest, most aggressive, oldest fascist movements in the world today, would you immediately choose to use your own name and identify yourself as an anti-fascist warrior against that movement, it took me some time before I decided that yes, I will commit and I will.
See, Peter, I have nothing to hide. I would use my own name on this. My question here is again about this particular company called Safety Net Transfer, and we have details that it is a company registered along with Bhajan Singh Bhinder. This is going to be asking questions. This is the question I'm asking you.
Perhaps you should talk with Bhajan Singh Bhinder.
I've read the toolkit. There is no incitement of any violence, but there are allegations from the Delhi police and certain pro-Khalistani supporters that you were indeed on a Zoom call to discuss the toolkit and the protest. I want to understand what was discussed on the alleged call, if there was one, and who all were there on this call.
You know, Chaiti, I would ask why the Delhi police isn't using their time to catch murderers and rapists instead of chasing its tail, trying to figure out who may have attended this mythical Zoom call.
So the Zoom call, according to you, never happened?
I have no knowledge of it.
You are saying this on record that you have no knowledge of any kind of a Zoom call that took place with some pro-Khalistani supporters?
I would have been honored to be involved in any meeting planning to help garner international support for peaceful protest by these farmers who are opposing laws which are being shoved down their throats against their desires.